started. Okay, we're good. We can get started.
I don't see a flag in here. So maybe we suspend the pledge of allegiance tonight for this. We have everybody tonight, so informed. So has everybody had a chance to read the minutes of the meeting?
Yes.
Does anybody have any changes need to be made or saw something wrong? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
We have a
Tom,
Okay, second. Somebody's got a lot of noise coming.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of interference. I don't know where it's coming from.
You're not talking, you want to go on mute? It's gone.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion.
They go on mute unless you're talking.
What?
I would hit mute unless you're talking to avoid all the feedback.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Say aye. Motion carried. Okay, we have no old business. New business, public hearing, preliminary plat approval for a major subdivision to be known as, wait a minute, that's the minutes, sorry. Let me go back to the agenda. Okay, we got to approve the 2021 meeting schedule. So that was submitted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you all know that since that meeting schedule went out, I made a couple of changes. It was actually on the bottom of the page, the very last meeting. There were some dates on there that were 2020, and I changed those to 2021. So we should be good now.
Okay.
Let's see here. Well, it's the normal meeting dates throughout the year. So I would entertain a motion to approve them as submitted. I can't make it. I'll ask for to approve.
I move to approve the minutes as submitted, the minutes schedule for 2021 as submitted.
Okay.
Second.
Second. We got a hand there, I see. So we have a motion and a second to approve the schedule. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Okay, motion carried. Now, new business, public hearing, text amendment ordinance number 34-2020, amend subsection 1.4D, scope of regulation, subsection 12.2, and signs prohibited, remove subsection 12.6, C6 and 7, amend subsection 6.9B, public notice of the Danville zoning ordinance. Lisa?
Okay, so I'll try to go through each one of these. I hope that I made this fairly clear by attaching the sections of the ordinance that it actually affects. Under the very first one, 1.4D, scope of regulations, what this does is the town, when we annex property, there is a default zoning that property gets zoned to unless they file a rezone petition. And right now that default zoning is RE1. So part of discussions that we've had during the RDC meetings, Redevelopment Commission, is we're going to be approaching some property owners out in the area of the landfill between, I don't know, 100, 150 East and probably 300 East, to see if anyone is interested in annexing their property. And so the conversation came up that if we do that, we don't want those properties to lose their zoning, which in most cases are industrial of some fashion. So the conversation started up through the RDC. So what this will do is actually allow a person to annex and have their zoning close to what they're currently zoned. And there is a caveat to that it's going to be upon the recommendation of the zoning administrator. So if it's unrealistic for someone to annex that, say they have a residential zoning classification, but it really should be commercial or vice versa, then that would give the zoning administrator an opportunity to say, hey, maybe you need to do something else. So that's basically what that text amendment will do. It will change the default zoning of the property when someone annexes. The next item is the 12.2M prohibited signs. And I don't know if you recall, but this was prompted through, partially because of the banner signs going across 36, we felt like the town had somewhat of a liability. So what we want to do is remove the section where it allows banners to be located across public right-of-ways, in particular US 36. So that part will be removed, I think. Let me look here real quick. Yeah, actually, it just strikes through a portion of that section, which ties into the next text amendment, which is section 12.6C6 and 7, public event signs. When the Parks Department went through a variance last year for their electronic message sign, the Board of Zoning Appeals granted them to do that, but they wanted to see the section of the ordinance that allowed banners in the park to be removed, since now we were going to have this electronic message center sign that would kind of take place of the need for that. So if there were going to be baseball signups or whatever it might be, then we would rely on that message center sign to advertise for that and not allow any more banners. So that will take care of that section. And then the last one, let's see. Got my papers all turned around here. So this has really needed to be done for quite some time. I don't know why anybody would have a heartburn over this. Indiana state statute for a long time required that you notify people public hearings through certified mail. And it got to the point where it became so costly, like to send a certified letter is about $7, $6 or $7. So what a lot of municipalities and a lot of entities are doing is going to requiring a certificate of mailing, which they don't have to sign for, but the post office is actually date stamping the date that letter goes out to basically ensure they're meeting their 10-day minimum requirement. So that is what that text amendment is for, is to allow them to just do a certificate of mailing. Because
what is the cost of their certificate of mailing?
It's about $2, $2.50.
Okay.
So, it just, it can really put a burden on some people, to try to send letters out if they have very many to send. So that is what that does. So I guess we just ask that you send a favorable recommendation to the council.
I have a question.
Okay.
When we go to 1.4D,
Right.
that was where the next property will be zoned to the like existing zoning district.
Right.
Do you mean an abutting or adjoining district, or just any district that is considered appropriate?
It would be a like zoning compared to what they have currently. So if they're in the county and say they have a light industrial zoning classification, the town would then accept a closely related or matched zoning district as they annex in. So the only time that that would be an issue, and then that's why I put in there that the zoning administrator could, make a recommendation, is that if somebody is currently zoned something they shouldn't be, if they're in an area, because that happens, and then that would allow the town to be able to say, okay, we'll annex you, but I think that, you're in a commercial area, you should have a commercial zoning and you have a residential zoning. So, but it's basically to say, okay, if you're coming into the town and you have, say, an industrial district, we're going to allow you to keep your industrial zoning so that you can, develop your property or continue to do what you're doing.
All right, I have a problem with the word like, and I have no problem with the concept whatsoever.
Okay.
The word like is very ambiguous.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here trying to think of something that isn't. Zone to the same or similar.
I was going to say similar,
Yes.
comparable.
Yeah, that is, in my opinion, takes away some ambiguity.
Okay.
Because like could mean exact same.
Okay. Would you prefer similar or comparable?
Either
Okay.
either is good.
Okay. That's fine with me, because it's still basically saying the same,
Yeah, as I say, I have no problem with the concept,
right.
but it's the word there, I think, is open to too much interpretation.
Okay.
So as it is now, anything that comes in is automatically zoned RE1, correct?
Unless they file a petition at the time of annexation, which probably 90% of the time people file an application to rezone.
Yeah.
But I think probably where a lot of this stems from is if we're really interested in trying to get people to join into the town, we don't want to make it difficult for them to have to go through all the process of changing their zoning. So I think that's where that stemmed from.
Yeah, Lisa, the thing I want to say is it might be a good idea to let everybody know that an RE1, when they zone to an RE1, that is an exempt subdivision status because they do not have to follow our subdivision control ordinance, and I do not think that's a good idea. So to come in as an RE1 means they don't have to build the infrastructure that's required of our subdivision control ordinance.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I really hate to admit this, but it hasn't been the practice to default to RE1. It's been the practice to default to R1, and I don't know where that came from. I don't know if there was something that changed it to R1, and I just don't know how that was presented, but we haven't actually, if somebody has annexed and didn't rezone, they actually defaulted to R1. So I don't even know why the RE1 is in there, but that's what's in there. And that's what, what we're wanting to change. And like Barry said, the RE1 is, it's going to be, that's designed for, more of a conservation subdivision or an estate subdivision where you've got large lots and, you're exempt from a lot of the subdivision control ordinances. Well, all of the subdivision control ordinance.
Yeah, the only thing that is not exempt is the stormwater runoff. That's still regulated regardless of the zoning. But I think it makes a lot of sense to have a similar zoning instead of classifying it as one. Where we might get into trouble with that is around the airport area. We might have some residential that's in the county if they come into the town. We definitely, most people won't want to have a residential development in that area. But they'll have to rezone anyway. I think it cleans it up quite a bit. But I do have something on something else if everybody's done with that portion. The banners over 36, Lisa, to my knowledge, since I've been here, I don't know that we've ever gotten approval from the state for banners to be over 36. So I'm not sure we complied with that part of the ordinance completely in the past.
Okay.
So I also think that's a good idea to remove those banners from over 36. I know that might give a lot of local people some grief because they use that for years, but in light of safety and liability, I think that's the number one concern for the town is the liability and the safety of the people passing through town on 36.
So the text amendments are a public hearing.
Is that a question or a statement?
It's a statement.
Okay.
So we have to open it up to the public, for all the public that's watching.
I think that background noise is actually the echo.
Yeah.
It's annoying. Well, I don't hear anybody, so we can close the that portion of the public hearings. We don't have anybody other than us. So, anybody else have any questions or concerns or property that's?
I do have a question, Lisa. Does 12.4, is that just the town of Danville? Because that wasn't in here. Is that section just the town of Danville?
I don't know. See it.
12.2 and 12.6.
Where'd you get 12.4? I mean,
So if you look at the summary,
I'm looking at it.
Okay,
So 12.4 has to do with exempt signs. So
Okay.
basically what that is saying, let me get back to that.
so it's 12.2M, and it's referring to section 12.4, which is not in here.
No, because we're not changing 12.4 other than where it mentions,
It's referring to 12.4 as the town of Danville.
right,
Okay,
yeah.
that makes sense.
I do have one question, Lisa, about somebody that's wanting to come into town on the rezoning. If they're zoned agricultural, we don't have that agriculture in town, right? So
Right.
what's-
Right. So yeah, they would have to change. I mean, what would happen under the current is it would just default to R1.
Okay.
So so what we would do is we would find a classification that probably would be R1. It depending on the size of the lot and what is surrounding it.
So that would avoid them having to go through a rezone after their annexation, basically.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we might find somebody that comes in and says, no, we want to, we don't want whatever zoning you're recommending or whatever it might be. But then they would go to the default zoning under the current.
So could they come in, I'd rather have R2?
They could.
Yeah.
Yes, they could. And what we would do is look at where they're located
Sure.
and does it fit in the R2? So, yeah.
Okay.
Would that make, I know that when we have annexation hearings and that sort of thing, and Tommy, I'm sure knows more about it than I do, but so would we be basically doing the zoning as well? So we'd have to address the zoning issues as well as the annexation issues all at the same time?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, your annexation issues are going to go probably before the council, but if I understand what you're saying is correctly correct.
Well, I'm thinking back over the past number of years where we annexed property and then down the road, they'll come into the PUD or the R2 or whatever. That a lot of the issues don't really pertain to the annexation, so it's sort of.
Yeah, I mean, if they annexed and just say
Thanks, Tom.
it was a property that would be suitable for an R1, and then a few years down the road, somebody buys that property and they come in and want to do a PUD, then it would be an application before the Plan Commission. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be, in one sense, it would be easier if if they said, hey, we want to do this R2, let's just do it all at once, so they're not having to draw it out.
Right.
Go through a number of public hearings.
Yeah.
With things being brought up.
Yeah, and that's going to happen. For instance, the property to the west, which is, just say this gets adopted. The property to the west, which is Westport Homes. So they'll come in and they will probably, they're going to rezone at the same time they annex, because what the property is currently used for now wouldn't fit into a zoning classification that we really have. And they're going to want a PUD, they're going to want to do something totally different with that property.
So we could put all that up today in one with the
Yes.
annexation.
Yes.
Good.
Automatically be able to come in as a PUD upon annexation under this new revision?
Your microphone's off, Lisa.
Oh, brother. I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
If they want to come in, be annexed, and want to come in as a PUD, can they do that automatically under the change, or do they have to go through the zoning process, the rezoning process?
If they come in and they want to request a zoning classification different from what it is currently with the county, then, that would allow us to say, yes, this is what it's going to be zoned to. So in some cases, they would not have to actually rezone. There wouldn't be a rezone petition.
Okay. What does that do to the nature of the PUD that is to be established?
The nature of what?
The PUD that is to be established. Where does that get reviewed?
That would get reviewed. That would have to go through the Plan Commission if they rezone to a PUD.
Okay.
Because it could be a commercial PUD, it could be a residential PUD, it could be a commercial, residential, industrial PUD. So in that case, they're kind of selling the concept of a community,
Yeah.
for lack of better words. So they would be required to do a rezone.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate because the PUD is far more complex than a single lot or two scattered here and there.
Yes. Absolutely.
So every PUD would be reviewed because it's actually its own ordinance.
Right.
PUD becomes the ordinance, so everyone would be reviewed regardless of what they were zoned if they were choosing to go to a PUD.
Yeah. Yeah, because they would be establishing their own development standards. There wouldn't be a set of development standards that they could go to in the zoning ordinance to say, okay, we're going to use, X lot width or whatever setbacks, because they're establishing basically their own development standards. So a PUD would have to go through that process.
Does the language that we are currently considering require that? Where would that be required? Because
I think it would be one of those things where we would leave it up to the zoning administrator to say, okay, you're not in an area where your like zoning meets what the town has. That's why we put that little clause in there, so that the zoning administrator could look at the comp plan and look at the zoning ordinance and look at the zoning map and say, or the land use map and say, this fits or it doesn't.
At least definitely outside the PUD, because I think the confusion is the PUD. The PUD, everyone will have to be reviewed before it's approved. If you were going to come in as an R2 and we thought that was a fit, then there would be no need to rezone. If they wanted to come in and we had an R3, which is more dense, most PUDs are going to be dense developments. So if they wanted to come in as a PUD, regardless of what it's currently zoned and what we think it is, they will still have to come to the Plan Commission to get that approved.
I don't know that the ordinance change states that.
All PUDs are basically every PUD is its own ordinance or development standards. So we don't have a blanket PUD. So we can't call it a PUD without their development standards to get approved, if that makes sense. So they would still have to come to the Plan Commission to get that PUD approved through the Plan Commission to basically codify that PUD, because that becomes the ordinance. Does that help, or does that make it more muddy?
No, it helps. I'm just trying to think through whether or not we need to add to Section D an exception, which would be except a PUD.
And that might be something we can add, but I believe most PUDs, regardless of what they are, because we don't have any standards.
Yeah.
We have a PUD designation, but we do not have standards set for the PUD. So regardless, they will bring in their own standards and we review it. It's not written that way, but I think, and Lisa, you might know more about this than me, but I believe all PUDs will be reviewed and adopted regardless of what we classify it as.
Yeah, I mean, each PUD is independent of the zoning ordinance and of other PUDs, because none are the exact same. If this is something that you are uncomfortable with, we can obviously take it back to the RDC and say, okay, Plan Commission wants they want to add some verbiage in there that would accept some district classifications. I mean, that's totally up to you. How we do that.
And I don't want to put words in Sue's mouth, but like with the property on the west, if they were to annex in and say, okay, we want to be annexed in as a PUD, if that annexation goes through, does the PUD automatically, it would almost appear like that would be approved with the annexation. And I wonder if what Sue's saying shouldn't be included in there, that if it is a PUD, that pending the approval of the PUD.
I think that's pretty much what I'm alluding to. Under this amendment that is currently written for our consideration, it sounds like the annexed property will automatically be assigned a similar zoning district. Do I have that much correct? Okay. But we've also talked about the fact that that would not happen with a PUD.
Yes, I understand what you're saying and I see your concern. And I'm sure that we can maybe come back with some wording that would be more suitable so that it covers not just PUDs, because I would hate to just, just say that just PUDs are exempt. I mean, there could be a situation, I don't know, but maybe we can come back with some different wording. Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
The one saving clause might be until otherwise classified by amendment to this ordinance.
What was that recommendation again?
It wasn't a recommendation, it was a thought. It says that it will be recommended by the zoning administrator until otherwise classified by amendment to this ordinance. Does that mean that the zoning administrator has to petition to have the ordinance amended?
No, I take that to mean that the zoning, if someone were wanting to say that their default zoning didn't really, or what their current zoning didn't fit with what the default zoning is, or what is like, then the zoning administrator would have a say as to whether it would be allowed or not.
I would suggest that we change it to the word like to similar or something else, and approve this, but give more study and come back at a later time after we've had time to consider what we want to do with a PUD. That can be done at a later time.
Lisa, I know that the PUD is not addressed in this that we're looking at, but is there language anywhere else in the ordinance about the PUD coming to the Planning Commission?
Okay, so there aren't any properties that are zoned PUD in the town unless someone requests. It's not a zoning classification that exists unless you request it.
So that's what I'm saying is that if you request it, then that's going to come to the Planning Commission. So I guess I don't see it needing to be addressed in what is in front of us today. I guess that's just my take on that.
Yeah, I agree that it doesn't have to be addressed today with respect to the PUD. I just, I'm trying to understand the processes, and I basically like the amendment.
Well, basically, the PUDs are just different than all the other zoning classifications, that all PUDs have to be reviewed by the planning commission, right?
Yes, I mean, it's like almost like a zoning district classification of its own, so like we have PUDs in the town, but each one of them are different. It's not like the R2 where you have a set of standards where all lots have a setback of 6 feet, where a PUD, you might have one PUD that's side setbacks are 6 feet, and another one it's 8 feet, or another one it's 10 feet, so it's almost like a district of its own.
Yeah, well,
One of those.
that's the case, the way this is written, if somebody objects to the zoning you're wanting to give them, and they say, we want a PUD, then you can say, fine, but it has to go through the plan commission, period. So, and each one of those can be a little different, they're kind of standalone, so. Yeah, I like the changes. I don't have any problem with the changes, just so we're all clear on that. That somebody doesn't slip a PUD in on us without review. We can't have that.
Well, that was my concern, and I don't have the background that you do, Tommy. And my understanding is not as deep as yours, and I wanted to raise the issue that seemed to raise its head to me.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and was a very valid point. I really had not thought about that until you mentioned it. How does this, I guess because I'm on like autopilot. So I just know everybody would have to, if they wanted to do a PUD, they would have to rezone to that. So.
Well, see, the problem is my career led me to find the loopholes in these things. And I was very good at it.
That's why we got you here.
And
The other thing that might clear it up is like Four Oaks has their, I think that was that Woodland Hills PUD? Each one of the PUDs are named. You're going to have a Kensington PUD. You're going to have Camden Creek PUD. You're going to have the Four Oaks PUD. Those are all set by their own, lot size, lot width, like Lisa was saying. They're all designated. They're really not going to set the setbacks until the PUD design is to have denser housing, smaller lots. That's the whole idea, is to get more lots and more green space. So kind of it helps everybody in one sense, and then gives us leverage on development standards, construction standards more.
Since you want to change the second line instead of like, you're wanting similar in there, right?
Similar, or Lisa had another word that was equally acceptable, but it's just a one-word change that I'm suggesting at this point.
Comparable.
Comparable, yes, either of those are fine.
I was wondering if you couldn't, at the end, after zoning administrator, in parentheses, all proposed PUDs subject to review by the plan commission. What do you think about that?
I think that takes care of my question. That the only other thing is that Lisa suggested there may be other categories that would also need to be mentioned as an exception. And I don't think we can brainstorm those today. It would be something that we would want to put some additional thought in.
Yeah, I would just hate to limit it to a PUD.
Okay.
But
Well, let's just change that one word and then go for it.
yeah.
You like similar, or what was the other one? Comparable?
Either one's fine with me.
Well, I can spell similar, but I may not be able to spell the other one.
That's the way I make decisions.
Okay, anybody else got any questions about it? So basically what we got to do is send a favorable or unfavorable recommendation or table it. to the town council on ordinance number 34, correct? That's what we're dealing with. Okay. If nobody has any further questions, I would entertain a motion for something, one or the other.
Mr. President, I move we pass forward a favorable recommendation for the text amendments with a change to the last sentence of the first paragraph, striking the word like and replacing it with the word similar.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Huh?
I'll second that motion.
Oh, we have a motion and we have a second on Mr. Barry.
Second.
All those in favor, well, call a roll call vote, Barry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go across the top, so it's not gonna be in any specific order. So if it's wrong, I'm sorry. Miss Howard,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Miss Rimpert,
Aye.
Mr. Pato,
Aye.
and Mr. Van Leer.
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Lisa, do you have anything to report?
We are just busy. We got an application for another section of Kensington Friday. We received an application. These will be before you next month. The self-storage units there at 300 East and Main Street, they filed that application. We still have quite a few people that are going to be coming in. I've talked to people regarding the property on 200 East across from the fairgrounds. They're getting ready to file something. The property on 10th Street that is owned by the Christian Church, they have somebody interested in that. We have found out that the property that Jim Ellsbury owns on 300 East, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that property, but Lennar has that under contract. So I'm assuming that that's going to
My server, low battery.
expand.
Alert from Combat.
And in Westport, they were going to be trying to file by this last Friday's deadline, but they are going to have to wait another month. So that you'll be seeing that application coming in February, probably.
Is
Kensington, is that the one I just signed the plat on? The first section?
No, the one that you signed the plat was for the first section of Kensington.
Yeah.
They have already filed section 2 and they just
Really?
filed section 3.
Wow.
Yes. And Camden has section 2 also. So, I mean, it's busy.
Well, keep you out of mischief. Maybe.
I can't think of,
Is that the property out to the west?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm gonna add an adjective to Lisa's statement. It's crazy busy. It's unreal. But
Makes the day
it makes
go by
the day
fast, right?
fast.
Makes the day go by quick.
How's the code enforcement coming?
What was that, Tommy?
I said, how's the code enforcement coming? I'm asking Barry. And he's
All right,
moving.
Barry, you're up.
He's doing a really good job. There's a lot of things that have been cleaned up. There's a couple of speed bumps that he's kind of having to massage to get to where it needs to be. Overall, he's done a really good job on getting people to comply without creating a lot of problems and issues. No screaming and yelling. So he's really stable at that.
The secret is if he calls are made to the town council.
He's very good at reciting the ordinance. And he's clear and concise, so that's helpful.
Yeah, it would be. Very good. Well, if that's all you've got, Lisa, I'm glad that we have an active board. Everybody's participating. And I wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a better year next year.
Thank you.
You too. You all.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
So,
you. Merry
bet.
Christmas.
That, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
We have a
Second.
motion to adjourn. We have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Very good.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
See you
Happy
next
New Year.
See you next